you go. It's all about you. It's all about me. It's all about what we do. Making art, you and me. Trying to find something to believe. Because I'm running wild, I ain't running free. Still got a lot of shit left to see.
Hi guys, welcome back, and it's your girl Britannia. I know it's been a couple of months or however exactly long it's been. I've just been busy with like school and stuff, and obviously it was kind of like summer vacation for a bit of it, and I do actually work full-time usually during my summer vacation period. So that's kind of why you haven't seen a video from me. It's just like, you know, the summer period, and I was applying for things like mini privileges, which is like a work experience for wannabe barristers, and school started and it's been hectic. Like, I had this issue with my flat. So me and my girlfriends, we all like got a flat together to live with each other, and one of the rooms, well, we think like two of the rooms started leaking. So we had to be temporarily moved into another flat while they fixed it for like the last few weeks. I also didn't have like a actual setup space like I usually did, which did not really motivate me to like record either. So like that's what's been going on for me for like the past couple of weeks. But now I'm finally back into my what is going to be my room full time and set it up properly into the way I usually like my stuff. And so yeah. Now today we're going to talk about Squid Game. But not just Squid Game, for those people who are probably really sick of tired of maybe hearing about Squid Game. Personally for me, I'm not tired of hearing about Squid Game. I understand like sometimes when things are like trending and like in a very like global way, like it's been literally everywhere. It's been on Instagram, it's been on YouTube, it's been on like even WhatsApp chats. Like Squid Game has kind of like dominated the social internet space for a good few weeks now, which is crazy because it came out on Netflix like weeks ago, and like it seemed like in the first 1 week or 2 weeks like people were watching it, but it wasn't like viral yet. But like at the ending of the second week, people were like somehow like letting everyone know that Squid Game was worth watching, and then it kind of like took off from there. You know, usually with Netflix, you know what's gonna be viral or not in the first like couple of days. And I had seen Squid Game on my like Netflix homepage as like a recommendation from me, but oddly enough, it didn't really do what it usually does when it has a new show, like kind of like give you a trailer, a clip, or like an automatic kind of like play or preview of the show. Yeah, so initially I didn't even want to watch Squid Game because I had thought it was like some kind of 3D animation show, because it's like the really colorful hallway they tend to go into before they play the games. That was the thumbnail that I saw on Netflix for it. So I thought, because personally I don't really like 3D animation. It's one of my least favorite I guess animation styles. So I tend not to watch anything that's like fully encompassed by 3D animation. So I was like writing it off for a long time until I figured out like that wasn't the case, and it was a live action TV show. Like I said, we're not gonna just be talking about Squid Game today. I'm just using Squid Game as a jumping off point to kind of talk about the way that capitalism is starting to become like a main kind of plot point or topic amongst a lot of these different shows and movies, and how it's being dissected and analyzed a lot in current media. So with Squid Game, in case you live on a rock or I don't know, so Squid Game is about a bunch of games that are being played by basically a lot of like South Korean citizens that are kind of like in a way recruited or picked off the street, who have a few things in common. They all have like a large sum of debt. They're all in kind of desperate needs. A lot of these people tend to have, or it seems to have, like families or responsibilities in which they do wish to be able to clear off this debt. So they're all in these very desperate situations, right? And they're basically recruited and taken advantage of by people from a upper class than them, in order for them to be entertained basically by these people they see as betting horses, to play these games in a way to earn some money in order to clear this debt. But the only thing is if they are eliminated from these games, they die. So these are the stakes. Like about like, what was it, 456 million won, or about 38 million USD. This is your chance to win this amount of money. Also though, if you lose, you can die. One of the first very interesting aspects of Squid Game that I do kind of like and I want to discuss is like the aspect of equality or fairness that's kind of projected through the voice of the main game master, the guy wearing the black mask, the detective's brother basically, who has won the games previously. This kind of like idea of the games must be fair. Like I saw a lot of comments when it came to people suggesting how players could have won those games while dying. Like for example, reading the rules and noting that the rules didn't say you couldn't use the beams for the bridge walk, or maybe tying shoes together to hit the glass, or if like both players in the marble game just swapped marbles. A lot of the times like the people would comment, oh well, everything has to be played in a fair way, or like that would be against the rules if all the games are all about being fair. And I want to counter with like, that is not true. Yes, the game master said that, you know, everything has to be on a level playing field, everything has to be fair. In a way, he kind of proves this by killing the doctor who's cheating and killing the workers who helped him cheat, and kind of like correcting the wrong that's been done by swearing that this will never happen again and they would compensate for this kind of error. However, that the whole thought that the games are fair just because the guy says so and he does that is a weird thing. I think that people kind of took away from the TV show, because we see like towards the end that the games are obviously not fair all across the board when it comes to certain scenarios and situations. For example, at the end of the bridge game, how basically like the game is cheated and the lights are turned off or the lights are messed with in order to kind of like see or make it difficult for the players to win, or see if like the guy who was an experienced glass maker in like a glass factory, see if he would be able to tell the difference between the glasses if the lights are turned off. Like that was a way of making the games unfair. Because please tell me, how could it be unfair for everyone to walk into the games with the experience that they have just because it would allow them to be better at the game that you picked, whilst actually knowing all of the background information about these people? Like they had all of these people's life information on hand. They could have full and well planned ahead based off the game and not have included the glass game because of the man, but it was an oversight on their half. It had nothing to do with the man. However, they fixed the game in order to make it more difficult for him, just because that was more entertaining for the rich. And you also kind of see this with like the cookie game, like when the guy asks, how is it really fair that some people get shapes hotter than others, when you kind of like blindly withhold information from everyone.
성공한 참가자는 지금 즉시 놀이터를 떠나주세요.
손을 치우세요.
같은 게임이 어딨어? 누구는 왜 좋은 거 뽑고 누구는 왜 안 좋은 거 뽑아야 돼?
This kind of perspective about what is fair really reminds me of just like a basic kind of tactic that we see a lot from the rich, actually. And it really reminds me of kind of like the American dream kind of thought process, that if you do everything the right way and if you work in all the ways you're supposed to and you work for just long enough, then you can achieve the American dream, like that kind of dream of being a middle class or even upper middle class, or even an elite person living in America that sees all their needs and wants fulfilled in a satisfactory way. However, that is not the truth, that if you play by a certain level of fairness, that all of these things will come from you. And it's usually always kind of like a thing that is perpetuated by people with money, that if you play the game fair, that things will work out for you in that way. But of course, if you take certain kind of tactics, that you're not going to see a decent end result. But that's not true, and it's actually kind of hypocritical when coming from the 1% of the people who are really rich, because a lot of the people who are billionaires and millionaires, but the wealthiest of the wealthy do not have the wealth from playing fair, from even playing any game that's accessible to anybody else except for the wealthy. Most people are sitting on blood money, whether they want to recognize it or not. It's gained from, it's generational wealth that's already been established for them. It's through no hard work of their own, maybe hard work in the future if they like, for example, take on the family company or things like that, but that wealth was already established way before them. So it's kind of like this weird perspective of fairness coming from people who are playing by completely different rules in a completely different game. However, they're judging other people for trying to achieve similar to what they have or exactly what they have through the means that they possibly could. So like when the game master says, oh, you know, this game is all about fairness, it's not really. It's just a kind of perspective or a kind of idea of fairness that people who are in an unfair position tend to have. And fair is never really fair when it comes to what they need or what they want or how they can rig the game in order to satisfy themselves and their own needs and wants. Another kind of like weird and just like kind of distorted viewpoint would come from like Ilnam, who is a wealthy person on his deathbed. And when he is on his deathbed, he's speaking to Gihan and he's talking about how he gave everyone like a fair chance to you know, enter the games and leave. And it's like, huh? First of all, the first round of the game, you basically specifically targeted people who you knew were in a desperate situation and were not in a position to turn down money, especially if it seemed to be for very simple games. You basically tricked these people because consent without full knowledge and information of what people are consenting to is not consent. Like it's deceptive. You have not gained consent rightfully. So him saying like in that part that like, oh, everyone agreed to start these games, and like no, everyone did not agree to die in these games. People agreed to play a game, you're correct, but not within knowing the full rules and conditions of what you're saying. This is actually a law in a lot of countries that a contract is not complete if certain like very onerous conditions are not aware of when the person consented to the contract. And these are contracts with like heavy fines, not death as the conditions. So it is quite distorted to think that Ilnam thinks that kind of consent is correct and kind of like makes him unaccountable for any kind of action when it comes to specifically targeting desperate people. And then you have him saying that, you know, he gave everyone the chance to leave and then they came back of their own will. Again, you have targeted desperate people. You have targeted very desperate people. So even a tactic like that is very unethical, whether you gave everybody a fair chance or not. And you also took part in the game, where I feel like it's also cheating, even though you're saying these games are fair. You took part in the game influencing other players' decisions, while you did not play by the same rules as everyone else, because you did not face the same death sentence in every single scenario. Because like as people have picked up on, there are certain things that kind of showed us all along that Ilnam was a part of the game in a more authoritative position, as like when he was playing red light green light, he was able to have no fear because a lot of the times the robot didn't even seem to sense him. And of course we saw that after the marbles game, when he lost, or I guess when he gave up, he faced no repercussions. So of course he will be able to give up. And he intentionally deceived people and influenced people's decisions. He influenced Jihan's decision to go back in the game. You're saying that you gave everybody a fair chance to leave and come back. However, you're also influencing people's mind in the outside world while you're doing it. So what is fair about it? What is fair about any of these things? You also had inside knowledge of the games while playing them. Where's the fairness? Fairness to a certain degree is what some people believe in when it affects others, when it comes to the rich, but not when it really affects them. And that's basically kind of like Squid Game in a nutshell when it comes to some of the things that I think they really highlight about capitalism, the way that the divide is made between the wealthiest and the poorest people. And there's also been like a lot of commentary about how certain shows and movies Skip Game, for example, kind of deviate from their own message, because at the end of the day, the most rewarding character, or the character we want to see win, our main character, the person who deserved it the most, still ends up with the money and is able to make other people's lives better. For example, Sang-woo's mom, he's able to make her life better, and Song-byuk's brother, he's able to make his life better and actually help him with the money that he's gained from these capitalistic death games. So what is the message really saying? Yeah, capitalism sucks, but only if you're on the bottom end? Or how is it really dissecting, analyzing the kind of structure that is created from this kind of society? And we're seeing a lot of capitalism being kind of like dissected and analyzed, and a lot of like new horror, or even not horror, but even more like thriller and movies. Like for example, Fear Street. We see in Fear Street the dynamics of one aspect of a town and another aspect of the town kind of like being in a way correlated to each other. While one town suffers, the other one thrives off of the suffering of the other town. This town, Shady Sides, continuously goes through more and more devastating kind of like traumatic events and things that are affecting the economics and as well as emotional state and quality of life of the people who live in this area, while the other area is able to siphon off rewards from their suffering and their trauma. We see movies like The Purge have sequel and sequel put out again, where it kind of shows that the government is using kind of like this all-out game of killing and violence in order to reduce the levels of poverty, because they know the only people who are going to die during the purge, or the majority of people who are going to die during the purge, are the people who cannot afford to be protected from purgers. And we see how that kind of also plays in a part of the government or the country deciding to boost the economic standing of the country through culling the poor and through the suffering and trauma of poor people, or people who just cannot, not even poor people. Do you know how expensive it is to afford a decent freaking security system? A lot of people only have cameras as a security system because that's the most affordable option. Or I guess people who can't afford to leave the country, which actually a lot of Americans can't afford, it seems. A lot of Americans don't even have passports. So it's such a targeted thing. So it's not even the bottom 1% of people, it's a large majority of people who realistically, if a purge were to take place, would be affected by the purge. You have like other horror movies like Ready or Not, where this wealthy billionaire family is literally sacrificing people in order to maintain their wealth and standing. They're not specifically targeting any person who comes from poverty, but they are sacrificing human life in order to maintain their economic standing in the world and to be able to continuously generate and garner wealth through obviously no real effort of their own to actually do that. You have Resident Evil, an evil capitalistic company going too far and burning the world down in the process by trying to make money. You have new movies like Parasite that is kind of like at first giving a depiction of this almost kind of like evil, unethical, desperate family who again is experiencing a version of extreme poverty, who is taking advantage of these seemingly ignorant, innocent, wealthy family. However, what we find out is that although yes, the family, the first family in Parasite, who is of lesser means and is not able to afford as much as a wealthy family, yes, they're using very unethical methods in order to help themselves climb the ladder of economic prosperity and success. This family that they're kind of in a way leeching off of is not automatically the good guys because of it, because they actually see these people, they barely see them as people, they do see them as inferior to them because of their financial status. You see with like the dad or the head of the wealthy family that he feels like people of a certain background have a certain smell and that they should know their place and that they shouldn't cross the line between who is in charge or superior and who is not in charge and inferior. So we see through Parasite that kind of dynamic that certain people can afford to act good and not go through drastic and unfair, unethical means when they're in a position that allows them not to do so. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're good or better people. They just don't have to do certain things, but they still have certain mindsets that make them bad people the way that family does. But and one of the most extreme examples of that is again with the dad. When someone is dying, he wants the other man, the other dad, to drive him and his family and forget about the other people because they don't matter and I'm paying you. And even more recently, we've seen with like the TV show Panic, if you have seen it on Amazon Prime. Again, it's a similar kind of risky, life-threatening games for money. But obviously because the participants are in a dire need of it, because they all kind of come from a town where a lot of people's situation doesn't seem to be the brightest. There are a few people who are able to, you know, afford themselves comfortable means, but that surely isn't the majority. So we're seeing this large increase in growth in these TV shows, kind of discussing or dissecting or analyzing the aspects of extreme poverty, or even not even just extreme poverty, but just like poverty, or just like people who are not the 1%, people who are not extremely wealthy, and people who are not maybe like the upper middle class, how their life experiences and the way our system is set up, how their life experiences are affected by the way that our capitalistic society is set up. Because capitalism is almost a global societal practice now. There's only so few countries where capitalism doesn't reign supreme. And it's really affected the way as people that we live and how we're treated and how our lives are determined now and how we choose to live out our life. Like, one of the main goals, it seems, of human life now is to figure out your career path, because careers are linked to money, and money is how you are able to afford a lifestyle and kind of like carve out a lifestyle to yourself. You know, we speak about passion and how our passion in lives would be to find that one true position or a career path or a job in which you fit in. But we didn't really have that as a system if you go back and to look at it. Like, finding that one true job didn't used to be a thing. So where's this innate passion concept coming from? And a lot of it is born out of capitalism. And a lot of people's passion or career path never seems to be something that is not going to be able to make them a decent living. And with all these movies and with all these TV shows that are coming out now that is increasingly criticizing the aspect of capitalism in our society, we also do have to kind of keep in mind that once these shows do hit it big, they are also in a way kind of conforming to capitalism in a way by taking part in the enjoyment and success of making extreme amounts of money because of the material that they create. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing, but you do also have to kind of keep in mind the thought process of like the kind of companies that are promoting and producing and creating this kind of content. For example, Disney having kind of like anti-capitalistic messages within their movies and TV shows or whatever else they make, criticizing people of a certain mindset that represent the big bad company while they are the big bad company that is also burning down the earth and slowly killing us in a certain way by polluting the environment and other such things, or like paying indecent wages, or just in general things like that's gonna eventually affect the quality of life of the general population as well as whoever it is that they employ. And you also have to keep in mind that sometimes when these shows kind of take the extreme way of showing the adversity of capitalistic perspectives and mindset, for example with Squid Game, these extreme death games, or something like the Hunger Games, in this dystopian world which you guess you wouldn't even really view yourself in, you know, it kind of in a way distracts you from the actual way in which capitalism is killing us. Like I said, by big companies polluting their environment, taking advantage of slave labor for minimal wages that is unlivable on, and things like that nature. Just like generally unethical and world damaging practices. It kind of takes you away from how bad capitalism, because it's not as extreme as you see in movies and TV shows. I think it's hard to really sometimes critically analyze the way that capitalism is harming us in real life, and you see these extreme kind of like death game traps going on for some people. Obviously a lot of people have the ability to see capitalism kind of displayed in this extreme way, but still have it, but still be able to see how that fits in or is able to compare into a more practical or real world setting. Yeah, but on an end note, personally for me, I really did love Squid Game. And I did like the real way in which the characters are kind of put into desperate situations. Because I feel like a lot of the time, sometimes it seems like, oh, you know, we shouldn't care about certain people being on the lower end of the totem pole of their kind of like capitalist structure, because it's of their own design and lack of work or effort that are worth to do what is need to be done in order to be successful in life. And a lot of the times that is not the case, and that's not the case with a lot of these characters. For example, with Ali is taken advantage of. He got a job, he did the things he's supposed to do. He is not an illegal immigrant in the country. He has a visa but is connected to this to this employer who is taking advantage of him, and the fact that he depends on him for employment status or working status within the country of South Korea. You have like Sang-bok, who's like a refugee from North Korea. She's defected from a dangerous country, and she is just trying to support her brother in a country where she has nothing to start off with because she's not from there. She's a refugee. So her circumstances of no consequence to her own actions. She's also a young girl. How much responsibility do you put on someone so young as her or her brother to have a life already started for them in a way for her to be able to afford to live? And she's also been taken advantage of by people in higher capitalistic role than her, as someone who I guess owns a business, if that's how you want to see it, who's in a position to take advantage of her. You have even our main character Gi-hun. He had a job. He's being ridiculed now about his ex-wife, and again, in some ways that is fair that he is being kind of like ridiculed or has like kind of like garnered some of her anger and just like her resentment from her, because it seems like he has done some things in their marriage that she's resenting, like not being there for her his daughter's birth. But we didn't really get to see a great play-by-play about what their relationship was like before the divorce. But he had a job, and when he lost his job, he tried to start a business, like the great American dream, but obviously he is Korean. He tried to start something of his own and make off his own profits based on his own idea and his own hard work, and it didn't work out for him. And maybe that is how he kind of garnered his gambling addiction, because we're not sure how he's gotten to where he is when we first see him in that first episode, when we're kind of like just like shaking our heads at him like, why would you do this with this money and this and that? Why would you do something so foolish? But the real aspect of it is that him trying to get lucky is the most logical thing for him in his mind, because that's the only way he's going to get out of that debt is by getting lucky. But there's no way for him to, it seems, work up to that goal that he needs to be able to take care of his mom and to take himself out of debt. And obviously we're not sure about Sang-woo, because with the information we have of Sang-woo, it seems that he is one of those individuals who has dug himself in his own hole. However, it seems like he is also the kind of person who would do anything it takes towards anyone to get himself out of that hole. So I would love to see more about Sang-woo's background. I know he's dead, but I really want to know what kind of motivated him to go from this position where he was already in probably an economic place where he was gotten as being respected, because in order for you to embezzle money, you had to be in a place to embezzle money from clients. So I really wonder what pushed him to want even further, what pushed him to maybe what people would say that is that capitalistic greed, to take the position he was in for granted and go for even further in a more unethical way. I want to see his background story with that. I really do. But yeah, so please tell me, what is your take on capitalism or the capitalistic message that is threaded throughout Squid Game? What is your take on maybe some other of the movies or TV shows that I talked about, like Parasite, The Hunger Games, The Purge, Fear Street, which is a lot of good content brewing on the message. It seems that capitalism is really taking in with the thriller and horror genre right now. So what it is that we're going to see next? You know, another recent movie was The Hunt, which saw like rich people just hunting for sport. What is the difference, do you think, with these movies where rich people are just, for some reason, just doing kind of like bad things just for the sport and entertainment of it, versus messages that are really trying to kind of thread a kind of like message of the capitalistic structure and the advantages that was taken out from people of a certain economic totem pole, not engaging in, but having to experience suffering in order for the rich to be able to be rich and enjoy themselves and have fun. What do you take from all this? And yeah, so that's the video for today, and I hope you guys watched the next one and enjoyed this one. So if you like this video, please click the like button, and if you want to subscribe to my channel, that would be great for me and wonderful, and I would really like that. And until I see you next time, bye!
Here we go, it's all about you, it's all about me, it's all about what we do. Making art, you and me, trying to find something to believe, because I'm running wild, I ain't running free. Still got a lot of shit left to see.